Hello to everyone on the recording. I forgot to record, so we're already doing some CSS, but basically we are going to try to replicate this card here just for funsies, and this is where we're at so far. Okay, so now that we have this, you can see this is kind of the layout of it. So instead, let's go ahead and replicate this, and then we'll change these. So this should be genre. And this would be price. Perfect. Okay, so now we have that, but you can see that these are stacked on top of each other. So I want I want it in a row instead. So what could we do to make that a row instead of stacked like a column? Yep, flex them. I like it. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add a class name. And for this, because I want them all styled the same way, instead of saying like author, genre, price, I'm going to just say like book details maybe, okay? And then that way I can use that same class name for all of these, and I don't have to repeat myself over and over in the CSS file. Another thing that I could do though is I could say like dot author. Do I do a, and then do I do it like that? Maybe, and then list them out like that. But instead we can just say book details. Yeah, that's what it's called. All right, so yep, we want to say display is going to be flex. And so whenever you do display flex, you automatically get them going from a column to a row unless you do the column. So the next thing that we could do is we could add a gap like we did up here, right? But that's just going to add a space between them. So author, genre, and price are all different size widths. So that's not really going to help us here. So there's a few ways we could do it. The first way we could do it is we could do justify content space between. So what that's going to do is put this, like push this div and this div all the way to the sides. The issue with that though is you can see that now these three here on the right are all different sizes, so those don't line up. So that's not great. All right. So what I like to do instead is I like to control the width of this font guy here. So I would add a class name here and I would say something like, I don't know, detail category. I'm also terrible at naming things, so name things better when you do this. All right. And then what you could do here is set a like width for it. So you could say width 100 pixels. All right. And then that's going to take this div and it's going to make sure it's 100 pixels. Does anyone remember the tip that I gave to help with spacing and how to visualize it? So the tip is to put it in a box. So whenever you want to see how something is working, you just put it in a box. And then now you can see how it's going, right? So 100 pixels, it's okay. I probably would want it to be a little further, but the issue with that then is that when you make it responsive, see now this, I'm getting a scroll bar, right? So that's kind of where when you set a width or a height for something like static, you're going to have an issue. Instead, we could do something like we want this to be 60% of the width. All right. And so now it's 60% of however big it is, right? But then we have an issue when things get smaller. Okay. So what could we do? Also, is CSS interesting? Do we want to keep down this trail or move on?
I like it.
All right, cool. So what could you do to make this more responsive? So right now, and there's lots of ways to do this. Right now, when I make my screen bigger, right? Yay, this is fine because it like looks good. But then I start, well, this one doesn't really look good. But when I start getting too small, then like these start to look bad. They're too close together. So what are some ideas you guys have to make that look better on a smaller screen? And even if you don't know how to do it in CSS, like what would you do if you were like just arranging this with your hands?
I would say if it's smaller size, arrange it differently, like on top of each other.
Perfect. That's a great idea. So we're already dealing with Flex, and Flex already has that, right? So the first thing I would look at is this width 200. All right. So when my library is super big, I don't like that those are still 200 pixels, right? Maybe I don't want them to be like huge, right? But like that would be one thing to deal with. So then the next thing that I would get rid of this. So maybe instead of width 200, I could change this to max width, which would be what's the maximum width that you could be. And let's say maybe the max width is going to be 400 pixels. So I don't ever want those to be bigger than 400 pixels. That did not go as intended. Okay. Interesting. Feels like we have a all right, so book container. Yeah, smart Jack, thank you. So Jack says that we need to make sure everything is 100%. So let's do, so maybe we can just do title then. Max width. All right. Oh, we've got books container, book container. Okay. So I'm going to change this to book. I know, I'm sorry. I'm getting confused between books container and book. Okay. And then let's make title width is equal to 100%, which is not helping. So then let's add a border and see where we're at. Okay. Do I need details to be 100% too? CSS is fun, guys. Let's add a border on here. Okay, so our book, we are mapping through books. And then books is within book container. So I'm guessing that maybe book container is our issue. Well, so book container goes the whole way. So where are we at with our book border, display flex? So those, I don't think that will do anything because it's already 100%. Is it the 400 pixel? It is the 400 pixels, but I felt like it would make it like the maximum width of this card would be 400 pixels. I'm still getting confused by my naming of things. So let's go back and call this book card. All right. But having the borders is helpful because it's allowing me to see like what's actually 100% and what's taking. So like all of these are already 100%. So what if we just make this, let's just be fun here, make this 100% and see what happens. All right, that looks better. Okay. except then it gets too big. So that's what was my max width would be. But maybe we make the container have max width instead. Okay. I like that. Okay, so I don't think we need a border here, but let's do max width here. Let's say the maximum width that we want this to be is, I'm going to just say 600 pixels. Is that going to be too small? That feels too small. All right, let's do 800 pixels. All right. I'm going to do 900 and call it a day. All right. So now this, the max width it can be is 900 pixels. And see how it stops growing, but it will shrink and go down. All right, which is what I was hoping for. Let me pull this over a little bit. Jack is what, 33%? Each of these cards. If I comment out the width 100%, they shrink down. So the book card needs to be 100% of the space it's allowed. I'm curious if we could also do flex equal to 1. Yeah, flex 1 is good too. Flex 1 is just kind of like take up as much space as you have. If we made this, I mean, we could try with 33%. The issue with that is potentially like the gaps, but that seems to work too. And also, well, okay, I'll show you where width 33% doesn't work. All right, so let's go ahead and let's open up Postman. Sure. I tried to clean out my computer earlier because I ran out of disk space. So I haven't gotten everything up and running quite yet. See if it saved I don't want to sign in. Do I have to sign in? Geez, oh, Pete's Postman. Not great. Would love to send a request. Thank you. Of course, you didn't save any of my requests. All right, so let's do a post request. What is our API port? To mean 3000. Okay, so to say HTTP localhost at port 3000/book. And then we're going to go to body. And then we're going to go to raw. And we're going to go to JSON. And then let's remember what we want in our body. So title. And everything needs to be quotes here. What is a title of a book? Modern PHP is on my desk, so sure. Author, some coder, genre, let's say like nonfiction, and price $100. All right. So now we have another book in there. So if I refresh, oh, I guess the 33% is not doing anything then. Do I even need it? It's interesting because it's like, if I don't have it, it's weird, right? Books container, max width book card. Yeah, all right. I'm just going to add flex 1. So they each take up their spot. But now that we have 4 of them, they're starting to get a little bit small again, right? So now this is where the idea of wrapping is going to come in. Okay, so what we can use is we can use flex wrap and then say wrap. So that way, when these get too small, they'll start to wrap. Now we don't have like a condition. I feel like that should wrap. We don't have a condition for when they do yet. So let's go ahead and make them. So the book card, okay, so that's because this is on the wrong one. So flex wrap should be on the container for all the books. So now see how it goes down and it's starting to wrap around as it gets too small. So we probably want this to be a little bit bigger. So we would say like min width, yeah, sure. Let's say 200 pixels. Okay. So that what that's going to do is it's going to start wrapping when it gets to the minimum width of 200. From there, you have to decide if that's what you like. Do you like that this one takes up all of the space? Right? And then from there, because that would be flex. So maybe then that's where we would want, let's see what the flex 33%, right? So that's going to make that. But then that never becomes 4 next to each other. Maybe with 30%. Would that do it? So yeah, we end up just playing around with it a lot. Let's finish our card a little bit before we go, and then like keep working on this. But that would be flex wrap. Okay. I don't actually use flex wrap ever, because what I like to do instead is like say what the width of I like to use media queries. Have you guys ever used media queries before? And do we want to?
Yeah, I'd like to.
Okay, so let's take a look at that instead then. Let's finish our card though, so that way our card looks how we want it. Okay. So, I feel like we want a little bit more spacing between the title and the details. Display grid would work too. I'm like a one-trick pony. So I learned flex. I'm like, I don't need grid. Even though grid would be more helpful in some cases. Okay, so for my book title, I think I want to add like a padding bottom to it. Maybe let's say 10 pixels and see how that looks. It looks a little bit better. Is that what our scale draw looks like? Maybe even 15. All right, and then let's go ahead and get rid of that border because I feel fine about it now. Okay, book details. We don't need the border. So you can go ahead and get rid of that. All right. And that's looking pretty good. I think what I want for the details category is I also want this to be bold. So sure. And then, okay. That looks pretty good. All right, let's then also for the book's container, let's add a margin of 0 auto, which is going to make it centered. So see how this container is now in the center of my page, no matter how I do it. It's because so margin 0 is talking about the above and below, and then auto is talking about left and right. And it's when you put auto, it just centers it. It automatically makes the margin on the left and right equal to each other. All right. So now that I have that, I can go ahead and remove this. But this isn't how I want it, right? Because, well, actually, let's keep the border because we're going to play around with this more until it looks how we want it. But like, right, these aren't centered how we want them. All right, so let's go ahead and look up media queries because I haven't done them with like just CSS in a very long time. We want media query for width. All right. So what a media query does is it allows you to change the CSS that you're going to do based on the width of your screen. Okay. So what you do is you at media, and then what is the screen? All right, let's just try the max width first. So max width. So let's say 900 pixels because that's how big our container is. Okay, so now anything that you put in there, you're gonna say like until the maximum width of 900. So 900 and above, I want it to look like this. But then at that break point, anything lower is going to be this type of a thing. So it's easiest to just kind of do something that's going to be like super simple to see. So we could do dot title, and then we could do something like color purple. I like to test that out first, because then I know what's going on. So when my width is larger than 900, my text is black. When my width of my screen is less than 900, my text is purple for my titles. Okay, so that is a media query. So that's going to be super helpful for like letting you decide exactly where you want things to go. Flex wrap is cool because it's going to like automatically wrap things, but it might not look the way that you want it to look. So I'm going to take flex wrap away, and we're going to see what we can do, right? So the first issue that we have, right, is like these are now not wrapping, okay? So we need to decide what we want to do with it, right? So one thing that we could do is change the flex direction based on the width, right? So instead of title purple, we could say, yep, books container flex direction column after 900. So now those ones I get down below 900, this changes to that, to this width, okay? And then I get smaller and it changes. You could use a combination too. So you could use like flex wrap, oops. So you could say that flex wrap is going to exist for a while, but then once we get to a certain point, so let's change this to something like small, like 300. All right, and let's play around this little bit. Okay, so I feel like when I have my screen big, I want to have like 3. Okay, so I like the width of this. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and open and see what the width is when it's super big. All right, the way you can do that is by highlighting over and seeing what all of the widths are. So I'm gonna use this. No, I'm not gonna do that. No. I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna dock this outside. All right, and I'm gonna turn the responsiveness off. So now I can go ahead and pull the dev tools back up and I can take a look. So I like my card. So I'm gonna look at my card and it looks like it's 292 pixels wide. So I feel like that's a good width that I have here. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and put this back on the right and close out of it. And then now that I know that I like it about 300 pixels, that can kind of be the place where we start figuring things out. All right, so the minimum width that I would go is 200, but maybe the minimum width that I would really go is 275. All right. And then that way now it never gets smaller than 275. And if it does, it starts wrapping. All right, so this is our width 30 pixel or 30%. I'm going to get rid of that. And let's see. So it's never going to allow me to get to having 3 next to each other because we've got 275 and then this is going to be max width of 900 pixels. And I'm guessing this gap being of so the book card, no, that's the book card gap. How do we know what the gap between these are? Books. So the book container returns book item. Book card. Oh, it's the margin here. So the margin, and then a good way to test and find what that is gonna comment it out and then save. You can see those went. So there's 10 pixels around each of these, right? So this is 10, this is 20, right? So if you do 275 times 3, you get 825, and then do that plus 10 plus 20 plus 20 plus 10. 885. Right? And then I think there's no margin on that, but maybe with the borders, then it makes it, that's why we can't have 3. Okay, 20, 20, 10, 10. Yeah. All right, so we might want to make this min width a little bit smaller to see if we can get 3 in there. But now I'm thinking maybe that's not it. Let's keep going down. Okay, so minimum width of 250 allows us to have 3. Okay, and honestly, the flex is not bad because if I don't do flex equals 1, it just wraps, and then it wraps again, and then it wraps. So I don't even know if we want to use a media query here. I might just like flex wrap without saying flex equals 1. What are our thoughts? We can still use media queries. I just don't know if it's going to be right here. How do you guys feel about flex wrap? Do we like it? You like that this goes down here? Yeah. Okay. All right. So we'll keep that. We'll make use of a media query though, because they're cool. All right. So here's where we can make use of a media query. See, well, that looks good at this length. Let's think of a bigger, like a longer name for something. No, I don't like that. All right. I'm trying to like make a media query pop in my head. But that's okay. All right, so the only thing I don't love about this now is that these aren't centered within this box. So that's what we'll look at next. All right. So I think I'm going to just try just content center. This is why I don't like flex wrap. We just figured it out. So flex wrap, right, is going to like wrap it. And when it went down to just the first one here, I was like, that's fine. But now that we moved this into the center, then it moves this one into the center, and I don't love that. Like I want this one over here. Jack, would grid fix that? Grid would work like that where it would go to the left here. All right. Well, maybe we learned some grid. All right, so class wrapper, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wrapper has grid. Oh, I forgot about grid. Okay, let's. All right. We shall give it a try. Okay, so I am going to just go ahead and comment this out here. So instead of display flex, since you do the template, making it 3 should wrap how you want. Okay. All right. So display grid template columns. So 1 FR, that's like saying we want them all to be the same width, right? So grid template columns, repeat 3, 1 FR. Let's try that. And then did that already work how we want it to? Well, not there because we have flex wrap, but flex wrap isn't a thing for grid, right? So I would have to, how do we make it change then when I make it responsive? Would I use the media query on grid template columns then? grid auto rows. Maybe I want it grid auto columns. If a grid item is positioned into a column that's not explicitly sized by grid template columns, implicit grid tracks are created to hold it. All right, let's try that. Auto. Well, that just made it in a row, in a column. Oh, maybe 33.3%, 10%. Flex values, 3FR. Fit content, 400. I feel like fit content. I'm guessing what that is. I don't know, but let's try it. No. All right. So grid, but like flex wrap. Okay, so they are saying how we want it. So use either autofill or auto fit. You would need to do a media query. All right, Jack, we will try that after this at this point. You will either autofill or auto fit as the first argument of the repeat notation. Repeat autofill 186. When autofill is given as the repetition number, if the grid container has a definite size or max size in the relevant axis, then the number of repetitions is the largest possible positive integer that does not cause the grid to overflow. Ooh, this sounds promising, guys. All right, let's try this. This is also why I'm not a front-end developer, because at some point I will get tired of doing this. All right, min, max. Oh, this feels good. Okay. And then, okay, have you guys used Copilot yet to explain things to you? So what I do is I highlight what is confusing to me, and then I say, Copilot, please explain. And then Copilot explains your code to you. So sometimes if I let Copilot make a guess for me, then I will have it explain exactly what it's doing. And then I can edit from there. So like I feel like min max, I was thinking would be like either take up the whole space, but a minimum of 250 pixels, maybe. But then I would like follow up with reading to figure it out. It was used to define the column structure of a CSS grid layout. Okay. Repeat autofill is used to repeat a set of columns. It tells the grid to automatically fill the row without as many columns as will fit based on the available space. All right, so our available space should be 900 pixels, and we want to fill it with as many columns as we want, okay? Based on the available. This means that the number of columns will adjust dynamically as the container's width changes. Cool. Okay, the min-max function is used to define a range for the column width. Okay, that's kind of what I was thinking. In this case, each column will have a minimum width of 250. Yes, that's what I wanted. And a maximum width of 1 FR. Fractional unit allows the column to grow and take up the available space. I think that's what I want. All right, let's see. Almost. Did you see that? That's pretty close. We're getting there, guys. Okay. I think I just need to not use margin, and I need to use whatever the, what's it called is. But all right, kudos, Jack. Using grid was much easier than us having to use flex. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of this margin here because I think the margin is what's messing this up. See, I don't really know why they're overlapping like that and then why that's coming out. But I still feel like we're close. Okay. All right, so let's look up now. So another thing that I like to do is when I find something that I like in terms of an answer to something, I'll make a folder and then I add it. So now if I'm ever like, oh, how do I do grid? I can go and find this real quick. Okay, so we want to do grid gap. Is grid gap in grid as well? Yes, okay. So instead of margin, we don't need margin. So I'm going to go ahead and take this away. Jack, you're really selling me on grid here. All right, then let's do gap 10 pixels. All right, so now, oh, and this is so lovely because it's like, it's 10 pixels in the columns and the rows. See, but I don't like, why is it doing this? Why is it getting rid of my gap? And they're like squishing. I don't want it to squish. Okay, when combined, creates a grid layout where each column is at least 250 pixels wide, but it can grow to fill the available space. The autofill, in practical cases, the squish wouldn't be an issue. What do you mean, Jack? All right, so book card, the gap is just referring to in between these. Border radius is fine. Maybe add padding. Well, I had padding and it's still in here and it's squished still. Gap, min width, maybe I don't. Ah, it was the min width. So this is already saying that the minimum width of the column is there. So to be honest, I don't really feel like it should be doing that, but you know, I'm not a computer, so who am I to say? Okay. But I'm kind of proud of our work so far. Yay us. Okay. So we have that. And now we can remove this container border. And we have our cards the way that we wanted them. Perfect. All right, is there anything else visually, because it's still kind of ugly, that you guys want to do before we move on to another route? All right, cool. We shall move on then. But yeah, I feel like we learned something today. I love learning something new. All right. Oh, okay. So let's actually do what we said we were going to do though, and let's add something. So let's look at all of our routes that we have, right? So we have get book, get a specific book, which we don't really need right now. I guess we could, but do we need to? Because what I was thinking is like what you could do, like you click on this book and then it opens up a screen with more info about that book, which is like pretty cool, but we already have the data about that book there. So if we did it that way, it just like wouldn't be super helpful unless we did like another page, but then we have to bring in React Router and we don't want to do that. So I actually don't really know if we're going to use this get book ID route at all. I guess we should just do like the main post a book, huh? Okay, so let's go back to our app because I think that's going to be a separate section here. So we have my library and then we have all of our books. So what do we want on here? Do we want it to have like a form that's just like always there? Or do you want to do something like a modal that I click a button to add a book and then it pops up saying with the form to add a book? Are we going with simple or not so simple? Not so simple. Okay, Marcy, I like where your head's at. All right, so let's then just start with how do we make a modal, especially because we're just using vanilla CSS, so we're gonna have to come up with this ourselves a little bit. So yeah, let's get to work. All right. So the first thing that we would want to do is add a button, which I think we can just add a button like that. It's ugly, but it's a button and you can click on it. Okay. So then, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna make the form first, and then we'll turn it into a component, and we'll handle modal in 2 weeks, because at this point, I feel like we don't have, in 13 minutes, we don't have time for a modal. So we also want to add the form. So the form is going to be HTML. Something like this. All right. Enter your name, enter your email, subscribe. So looks like we have label and input. So this is also where it's good. It's good to know how to do this all by scratch, but it's also good to get to the point where you can, you've already done this, and then you can start using libraries. We'll do it by scratch because, to be honest, it's been a very long time. So let's go ahead and just steal this form here and give it a go. I'm not going to copy it though. Okay. So we're going to do form. And then in our form, we are going to do, sure, label. And then we're going to do title. And then we're going to do input type text. And then author, input type text. Genre, input type text. Thank you, Copilot. Did that all for me. Okay, so now we have our form and the action. And then we want a submit button. How do I make a submit button? Input type submit. Okay. And then instead of submit, I think I'm going to say add book. So then I can get rid of this button here and go back. So we have our form. It's very ugly and it needs a little bit of flex in its life, but we'll say that's fine for now. Okay. So then when I click the submit button, then whatever action I put in this action field here, yeah, let's see, add book, that function's going to get called. So we need to write an add book function here, which I feel like I could cheat, but let's not cheat for now. And then let's just do console.log. Hi. All right, here. Is void is not assignable to type string. Am I supposed to assign it to a type string? Okay, action. Let's explain with that. Okay. And then method is going to be post. What is the action supposed to be? Meh, I'm not gonna worry about that. Okay. I've never done a form with an action in React. Action search. Am I not using the right form? React's extension to form are currently only available in React's Canary and experimental and stable releases. Form only works in a built-in browser HTML component. Okay. All right, so let's find form here. Oh, which led us back to where we were at. Okay. So action, they're just leaving it as blank. So let's find what they want here. The URL. Oh, it's just the URL because we're doing like a post to the URL. Okay. Is that what we want though? How do we put in our overridden by a form action on a button, input, submit? Oh, so is this would be, can we add an action here? Form action? Can I do this? See, and this is why you do it from scratch, because if you don't do it from scratch, you forget everything. So yeah, that's supposed to be a string too. All right, I just need. What I'm curious about though, so it's supposed to be a string, so we're supposed to put like the route, so like our HTTP local host at port 3000, yes. Slash book. I'm just wondering how our inputs get, is that automatic? Our inputs send to the, okay, so the HTTP method is gonna be post form data sent as the request body. Okay, that's helpful. So do I need to have what is, I guess let's just give it a try and see what happens. And what I'm curious about is like how we would label what each of these are, right? So like, what do we need? Okay, so new request, my endpoint body, hello world. Okay, that's not exactly what we want. Okay, slash book method post. All right, let's try. Let's open up our console for the API and see what happens. Okay, so test title. Let's just do one anyways. Author, genre, price, add book. All right. Null value in column title of relation book. Okay, so it did post. We just aren't really sure what is in the body. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to console log book body here so we can see what's going on. All right. And maybe we don't want to do it this way. I thought this might be simpler, but now I'm kind of like, is it? All right. So book body is empty. So do we need to have some sort of all right, so HTML form post sending form data. Okay, form action form. So this is a get value. Say, okay, so that adds it, but I want to post the post method. Okay, so here they have a post method label for say name. Oh, maybe we need name. Say hi to. All right, let's add name and see how it goes. Okay, name, title, name, author. What's this one? Price. Wait, I've gotten confused. That one goes to title, author. Oh, this one's genre. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and try this. Title, author, genre, price add. Whoa! Did you see that? That's pretty cool. Okay. So it was exciting. Clearly, I've never done a form the way you're supposed to do a form before with HTML. Typically what I would do is I would create like the inputs and stuff like that, and then I would actually have like a function that does the request. What I don't love is I'm not really sure how to make it not go to this page. So that's something that we should look into and see if that's going to happen. But that was pretty cool. Okay, so how to make form submit not change page. Prevent default method. This would make validation more on the front end. What do you mean, Jack?
I think that goes inside the method you make.
Yeah, I'm feeling like this might not be our best course of action because Jack, like you said, the validation. So like typically I would want to validate before I send to the back end. And then, yeah, I'm not really sure because here, right? So like handle submit is typically how I would do it. And then, yeah, you would say prevent default value, but we're just doing this. So I think for next week, we'll actually change it back to like a more typical React form, but this was fun that we learned how to do it like this. But yes, that way we could actually validate that the title is something input type submit. Oh, so this is just saying basically to just do the button instead of input button. Oh, wait, so input type button, but I doubt that's gonna, let's see if that works before we hop off here. Title 2, John Ray 2, race 2. I'm wondering if this is gonna actually submit. So yeah, I don't think it's submitting anything. As you can see, it's not coming through. So then I think, can you add an action? On click. Let me do an on click here. Submit form. So, okay. Well, thank you for joining me. Sorry, I was a little bit all over the place today. Hope you guys had fun. But yeah, we'll keep playing around with it next week. Do more of a traditional form and yeah, continue working on our library. I'll see you guys next week, okay?
Thank you. Bye-bye.